Good evening and a warm welcome to all for the monthly clinical meeting of the Association of Obs and Gynae of Delhi, organized virtually by Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, BLK Super Speciality Hospital, New Delhi. On behalf of Jacksonpal Pharmaceuticals Limited, makers of Doxipal DRL doxycycline 100 mg capsules, the drug approved by government for treating COVID-19 patients, Lycorate Trex sachet for preventing pregnancy complications, and Endorec 2 mg tablets of Dynagest for medical management of endometriosis. I am Dr. Vipin Tyagi, along with my teammate, Mr. Amit Saxena. We welcome and thank HOD Department of Obs and Gynae, BLK Super Speciality Hospital, Dr. Dinesh Kansal, for this opportunity to host the meeting. We are sure the cases to be discussed will throw light in management of rare gynecological complications. Welcome to all faculty, AOGD members, and attendees from across India and abroad who have joined us today. Please keep posting your queries by text in the Q&A box. It will be answered at the end of the session. Also, please be informed that a quiz based on the articles published in the May month bulletin will be conducted at the end of AOGD monthly clinical meeting through Kahoot. We request attendees to please participate. Top 3 winners will be awarded with attractive prizes. Please note this webinar is brought to you as knowledge sharing initiative Jacksonpal Medical Services, and this session is streaming on Facebook Live. The recording will remain on Jacksonpal's YouTube channel for reference and promotion. We begin the proceedings with the AOGD President's address. Over to you, Dr. Ashla Batra ma'am.
Thank you, Vipin. I welcome you all once again to this AOGD clinical meeting hosted by Dr. Dinesh at BL Kapoor Hospital. And like last year, she is the opening batsman this year also. And before we begin, I would like to pay tribute to Dr. Ghai Bhandari, who left for heavenly abode on 13th May 2021 and followed by her loving husband just a few days back. Dr. Ghai was a legend, a disciplined, elegant, graceful, versatile, kind-hearted, skilled surgeon, and an educationist and great academician and a noble human being. She was one of the people who had helped AOGD in its formative years. Today, all of us express our sincere condolence and prayer, and may her soul rest in peace. So let us just all of us close our eyes and keep silence for 1 minute to pay tribute to her. Thank you, everyone. This, whole year has been, full of surprises, and so many have lost our dear ones, our colleagues, our friends, our seniors, our family. But the show must go on. Therefore, we will keep working in our endeavor to bring knowledge and helping people through our public forums. So, since this is our first meeting, and I thought that first time I was not able to introduce my subcommittee chairpersons. So, I think all of you know them, but just this is a pick of all of them together who are our chairpersons and who are our subcommittee chairpersons. And as you all know, our theme this year is promote women's health by strong will and quality skill. By strong will, we want to promote health for women in her all walks of her life, adolescent, reproductive, and menopause. But the emphasis this year is going to be on the adolescent health because we can't do everything. So we have to, focus. So this year, I think Dr. Anita Rajoria, who is very, very active, and she, with her co-chairperson Sujata, under guidance of Dr. Pratima, will be able to achieve our, goal to provide quality care information to our adolescents through webinars. And then the quality, our will is to do cancer prevention. For that, I look upon Dr. Sushma Sinha, Dr. Sunita Malik, and of course our Dr. Sarita Shamsundar, who would be working in this field. And I think all our chairpersons and everybody in AOGD, we will be, working towards these goals. So now I think I will stop here and start the proceedings. So I hand over to Monica to read the last month's activities and tell about the forthcoming secretary's report by Dr. Monica. Monica.
Thank you, ma'am. I welcome all to this monthly, in fact, the first AOGD monthly clinical meeting under our tenure, since the first one was postponed due to this havoc which has been created by this unprecedented times in this COVID era. So I welcome you all, and I start my secretary report. As you all can see, we took over, and I would request everybody to kindly bear with me, because I need to tell you about the things which happened both in April and May, because we couldn't present that in the previous clinical meeting. So we took over in the virtual way in the last monthly clinical meeting in the tenure of Gangaram, and then eventually physically as well. We got the handover from the secretariat from the Gangaram Hospital, and then the the academic activities soon started as we started our tenure, starting from 1st April by Infertility Committee of AOGD doing a webinar on fibroids organized by DGF Outer Delhi. Then there was a session on FAQs on care of pregnant women done by Sir Gangaram Hospital under the aegis of AOGD on 2nd April. Again, there was a webinar by Gynae Forum Dwarka in association with Multidisciplinary Committee of AOGD on 10th April 2021, in which evaluation of breast lump and breast care and contraception was discussed. We then had a public awareness program on breast and cervical cancer screening by AOGD Multidisciplinary Committee on 15th April 2021. We then had a FOGSD webinar under the aegis of AOGD and other organizations on 17th April 2021. Then there was this first AOGD eCME on the latest thing on board, which is an update on medical termination of pregnancy on 23rd April 2021, which was very well received. We then the duo, the famous duo of Safe Motherhood Committee and Quality Improvement Committee, QI Committee, they did CME on management of COVID and pregnancy, medical perspective of obstetrician on 7th May. We then had, celebrating the International Thalassemia Day, the AOGD Fetal Medicine and Genetics Committee on 8th May 2021 did a CME webinar on prevention and management of thalassemia major and obstetrician's perspective. Now in May month, we kind of actually took a back seat for various academic activities, and we started concentrating on the activities related to the current pandemic, because seeing all the plight and suffering all around, we decided that we will hold back our other academic activities and concentrate on just the public interest programs. So we, during this period, we had a panel discussion by the AOGD Oncology Committee, which discussed about management of gynecological cancer amidst the COVID-19 pandemic on 15th May 2021. We then did a new innovative kind of thing to reach out to the public, and where we collaborated with the iMums app, and we took on the questions of pregnant females head on. So the nodal officers from our hospital, Subjung Hospital, and me and Achla ma'am, we took up this topic of pregnancy and postpartum care in COVID era on 17th May. This program was simultaneously relayed on YouTube, Facebook, and of course the webinar per se. And there was a well 10,000 around attendance for this program in total. Continuing the flavor further, we did a program for healthcare workers, especially dealing with their mental and social well-being. And this was on 21st May 2021, in which was again a new kind of group discussion format online, where we had a group of administrators, psychiatrists, psychologists, obstetrician, and meditation experts. Then our adolescent committee, in association with the endocrinology committee as well, did 2 programs on 18th May and 24th May on this, the thyroid, on the thyroid disorders in women's health and pregnancy as well, commemorating the World Thyroid Day on 25th. Then FOGSD did a webinar on the ages of AOGD on 25th May 2021. And recently on 26th May, we had a webinar where Faridabad Obstetric Gynae Society did this in association with Safe Motherhood Committee and the QI Committee of AOGD. Then yesterday itself, we had another webinar with the Gynae Forum Northwest under the aegis of AOGD, in which on popular demand, we again discussed the MTP Act, what was previously there and what's new. So coming on to the administrative aspects, what we did in last 2 months was, we, as soon as we took over, we did this first AOGD management committee. We called it management committee meeting because we included everybody who guides us, like the executive members, patrons, advisors, and the chairpersons of AOGD subcommittees, to put forward the floor to the program, what we envisage to, and take their opinion as well to formulate further activities. We then had AOGD subcommittee chairpersons meeting on 20th April 2021, where we kind of formulated the guidelines, to call the SOPs, for how the program would be conducted during our tenure, and how best in interest of everybody around these programs can be done. Not leaving behind the technological aspect, we kind of revamped the AOGD website under the able guidance of these 3 people on your screen: Dr. Sumitra Bachani, Dr. Sarita Singh, and Dr. Nishi. Dr. Sumitra being the web editor. And you all can go through this website, all the information of the programs we've done, we'll be doing, all the latest information on other important aspects is constantly being updated on the website. We, of course, brought out this beautiful first AOGD bulletin in May, which I'm sure you all must have gone through. This was on the very pertinent topic of labor, the evidence-based management. And kudos to our editorial team led by Dr. Rekha. And based on this, again, which is a new thing, which we thought in this technology times we should make use of, will be this quiz, which will be done through the Kahoot app. And you all will enjoy it at the end of this clinical meeting. At the national aspect, we attended the FOGSI Managing Committee meeting on 17th and 18th April 2021, me and Dr. Achla Batra as President and Secretary of the Society, and to bring forth the contributions of AOGD members at national level. This FOGSI Focus Urogynecology was released, which is edited by none other than Dr. J.B. Sharma, our own AOGD member, who's chairperson of FOGSI Urogyne Committee, co-edited by Dr. Rajesh and me. And then there was this FOGSI Focus on Nutrition, in which I happen to be the editor. And there's this yearbook of obstetrics and gynecology. These all were contributions from AOGD at national level. As regards the forthcoming events, a very important event right tomorrow is again an event which we planned to boost up the morale of all our members, and we named it as Stress-Free Healers Heal Better. This is an inspirational talk by Sister P.K. Shivani. This is very much tomorrow, so all of you please join us for that. Other events coming till the next monthly meeting would be RCOG, in association with AOGD and NARCH, will be organizing a webinar on evidence-based management of intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy, where we have an international speaker, a renowned one. All of you, please join it on 30th May 21. We then have trials and tribulations with hysteroscopy webinar by AOGD Endoscopy Committee on 4th June. Then we have a CME on optimizing outcomes of LSCS on 8th June. Then there is a webinar on antepartum hemorrhage under the aegis of DGF Outer Delhi and Safe Motherhood Committee AOGD on 8th June again. There will be a CME on thyroid disorders from womb to tomb by AOGD Endocrinology Committee, 10th June 21. We then will be having medical legal aspects of teleconsultation webinar by AOGD QI Committee on 16 June. A panel on GDM by AOGD Multidisciplinary Committee, NARCHI and DGF Southwest, 19 June. CME on investigations, investigations in infertility, adjuvants in male and female infertility by AOGD Infertility Committee on 22nd June. And again, a webinar by Endoscopy Subcommittee, which is on endoscopy in COVID era on 24th June. We then will head on to our next AOGD Clinical Monthly Meeting, which will be at AIIMS on 25th June. Thank you all for patient hearing. I now invite Dr. Dinesh and wish her all the best for the presentations of this monthly meeting. So over to you, Dr. Dinesh.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Dr. Achla, Dr. Monica, to give us the opportunity to hold the very first meeting of your tenure. And I think we are already 20 minutes now. I request Dr. Poonam Khera to start her screen sharing. She's she's an associate director in the hospital, BLK Hospital Gynecology Department. And she has an interesting case, that is a didelphys uterus, where she has to do a hysterectomy, and the patient also has a hemivaginal septum. So what are the technical difficulties? Make it full screen, Dr. Poonam, please.
Today, my presentation about TLH in rare case of didelphys uterus with hemivaginal septum. So just a few lines about this didelphys uterus. It's a rare congenital Mullerian duct anomaly caused by failure of fusion of two Mullerian ducts during embryonic development. Class 3 anomaly according to American Fertility Society 1988, characterized by two hemiuterus, two endocervical canal and two cervices, and one fallopian tube each side. This vagina can be single or double. Varying degree of vaginal septum can be associated with this. And it's about 8.3% of all Mullerian duct anomalies, second least common among all the Mullerian anomaly. So along with this, there are chances of 10%, in 10% cases, there can be renal anomalies, and most common association of renal agenesis and duplication of ureter. MRI is the most important modality, imaging modality of choice for type of anomaly and to rule out renal anomaly. So there is one syndrome, Hurlin-Werner-Wunderlich syndrome, which is a very rare congenital anomaly involving both Mullerian ducts and Wolfram structure. So there's a triad of didelphys uterus, obstructed hemivagina, and ipsilateral renal agenesis. If there is a didelphys uterus, it's important to see about the renal anomalies. It's very important. If there is a renal agenesis, it means it fits into Hurlin-Werner-Wunderlich syndrome. So my case is about 50 years old, female Paris woman having 4 children and all were normal deliveries. And she presented to me with history of heavy bleeding during the period since 1 year and with irregular bleeding in between periods from last 3 to 4 months, means history of menorrhagia and metrorrhagia. So she came to with these complaints, and in the past also she took medical treatment from last 1 year, but there was no relief. Then they did DNC also, and histopathology report was inflamed polyp. She produced 4 children and all were full-term normal deliveries, no history of preterm delivery, no history of infertility, no history of any dyspareunia, and no problem in obstetrical history. And she had lab sterilization also 22 years back. So per abdomen examination was solved. Per speculum, only cervix was seen. One cervix was seen. Left side hypertrophied, looks normal, healthy, deviated towards left side of vagina. Right side cervix was not seen, but there was a fistulous opening. There was some hole-like thing was there on right side over the vagina, from where the blood was coming out. During menstruation. That's why I examined her during periods also, just to see what is happening now. So on PV examination, left side uterus felt anteverted, bulky, and with restricted mobility. Right side also, there was a firm mass and with no mobility, and size could not be made out. Ultrasound report also reported the same. There were two uterus were seen, and with cervical canal opening into the vagina, and they reported bilateral simple adnexal cyst, also 10 into 12 millimeter right side and 15 into 10 millimeter on left side. And according to MRI report, there was a complete duplication of uterine horn, cervix, and single vagina, and endometrial thickness 3.5 and 3.4 centimeter in left horn. No renal abnormalities reported in this case. So pre-op investigations done, counseling was done, and other treatments were not discussed in this case, and only discussed, she wanted definitive management, that is surgical management, and she was discussed about the hysterectomy, open and laparoscopy both. But she wanted laparoscopic surgery, and about this laparoscopy surgery was discussed in detail, that we can face problem also in this case, and all problems were discussed with her. But she opted to hysterectomy. So plan was total laparoscopic hysterectomy. So point to remember, in such cases, careful planning and preparation is very important. Thorough history examination, especially for vaginal septum, rule out associated renal anomalies, and intraoperatively, whenever we put scope, one should see detail. Inspection is very important about the pelvic cavity. So anatomy is very important to see, and identify the ureter and their proximity to cervixes is important to see. So I will show you just small video about this case, and there were adhesions with the anterior abdominal wall and lateral right pelvic wall because of previous surgery, because she had 22 years back lab sterilization, and because of laparoscopic sterilization, there were lots of adhesions in this case, even with single surgery. So first adhesolysis done in this case, and after adhesolysis, both uteruses, both corpora seen, and in between two corpora, there was a thick band, vesicorectal band, there was which was starting from the anterior bladder peritoneum to peritoneum over the bowel. So this is the right side where the adnexa was adherent, which I'm separating, and dissection started laterally, going anteriorly, opening the utrovesical pouch, and then bladder was pushed. Adhesions, there were lots of adhesions, so which were handled very carefully, separated carefully to avoid any injury. And it was vascular also. And right side ovary was enlarged. And in this case, I decided to do hysterectomy and BSO both. So this is the remaining vesicorectal fold, peritoneal broad fold between two corpora, which I'm separating, dividing, and carefully taking care of bladder anteriorly, and almost it is cut. So bladder I'm pushing. So this portion was very important to do carefully. So this is almost complete. And after doing this, this right side, this is the infundibulopelvic ligament, and ovary is also enlarged, right ovary, and it's adherent also posteriorly and laterally. So adhesolysis and this infundibulopelvic ligament coagulated and cut, and this was so all this ovary and tube was adnexa was removed. So after that, I put myoma screw the uterus to manipulate it laterally and anteriorly and posteriorly. This was very helpful because here a uterine manipulator was not put in. So when myoma screw was very helpful. This is, I'm securing this coagulating uterine vessels. So because of adhesions all around anterior, posterior and laterally, so I decided to do subtotal hysterectomy in this case to make surgery simple, because I was facing problem because of adhesions. So I decided to do subtotal hysterectomy. So this uterine corpora was divided after coagulating uterine vessel, and with the help of hook, monopolar cautery was used. And so almost this is, I'm separating this. So uterus is almost of same size as we are seeing on right side. So almost this is detached from the cervix, and cervix, stump of cervix is looking normal and dry also. This is the another part side of the uterus, left side. This is looking normal and no adhesions laterally, but medially there was a band, and this was like a simple TLH. I did not face much problem, but dissection, medial dissection was little difficult. So UV pouch open and bladder pushed down. This is a vesico-uterine ligament, which I'm cutting to push the bladder down. And this area is almost clear now. And I'm feeling the cup of vagina also. In this uterus, I put vaginal manipulator also to elevate. So handling was better in this here. So I did not use myoma screw here because there was a manipulator, uterine manipulator. So this is the part of peritoneal fold, which I am cutting. So medial, so after this detaching all around posteriorly and laterally, colpotomy started. So this is the medial part of uterus. So while doing colpotomy, still there are some bands, fibrous band and part of that peritoneal fold also. So this area was little vascular, and I took time also to complete this part. So almost this is complete, and cervix. So this uterus and another uterus, right uterus, both were delivered vaginally. And after delivering the uterus, both uterus vaginally, then I saw another cervix, right cervix from the colpotomy area, very nicely. So which was held with the Alice forceps, and then paravaginal and paracervical canal clamps applied to remove that cervical stump also, which was easily handled. So endosuturing was done, and hemostasis achieved, then drain put in. But cervix was removed vaginally after doing subtotal right side. So why I decided to do subtotal hysterectomy in this case? Because yes, this is the specimen which I removed. This is the detached one part, right uterus and cervix, and it's almost a normal size of it's normal size, and this is the left uterus and left cervix, which was seen vaginally. and which was sent for histopathology, and report was benign. And ovaries were also simple serous cyst, benign, everything. And in references, I read about 3 cases. One case was done in 1999, 17 years old. In that case, they did laparoscopic total hysterectomy in case of uterine didelphys and with obstructed hemivagina. This was almost the same, but it was a hypoplastic cervix and obstructed hemivagina. So they did hemihysterectomy. 2 more cases were done. One was in 2012. So they do it was uterine didelphys, and they did subtotal hysterectomy in that case, and they left behind both cervixes. I don't know why they did like this in 2012. And one more case was done in 1999, and they did this complete hysterectomy both.
Thank you for that. Question and answers will be at the end of the meeting. So now I would like to invite Dr. Pooja Gupta. She's associate consultant with me. She's my right hand, you can say. Dr. Pooja, you can start sharing your screen. A very interesting case of, I think all cases should be interesting. Unmarried girl where we removed more than 100 fibroids because she was bent upon keeping the uterus. Let's see what Dr. Pooja has to show.
Fibroid or leiomyomata are the most common benign tumor of the uterus, which arises from the uterine smooth muscle tissue. Its prevalence is 70 to 80% in women up till 50 years of age. It can be subserosal, intramural, or submucosal.
Have you logged in from 2 devices, Dr. Pooja?
This is classification of fibroid uterus, describing the relationship of the fibroid to both the serosal and the mucosal uterine surface. Type 0 to 2 has submucosal relationship. Type 3 abut endometrium but completely intramural. Type 4 is completely intramural. Type 5 and 6 are defined by relationship to the serosal layer. Type 7 are subserosal pedunculated fibroid. Type 8 are ectopic fibroid or cervical or parasitic fibroid. These are the factors that affect the risk of uterine fibroids. Increased parity, late menarche, smoking, use of oral contraceptive decreases the risk of fibroid, while African descent, age greater than 40 years, early menarche, family history of uterine fibroid, nulliparity, and obesity increases the risk of fibroid. More than 50% fibroids are asymptomatic. They are diagnosed incidentally and does not require any treatment. Symptomatic fibroid present with abnormal uterine bleeding, pressure symptoms like frequency, urgency, and bowel symptoms, pelvic pain and dysmenorrhea, abdominal distortion, infertility, and pregnancy-related problems. Ultrasonography is the recommended initial modality for diagnosis of uterine fibroid. Transvaginal sonography increases the sensitivity to 90 to 99% for detecting the fibroid. Sonohysterography further increases sensitivity by diagnosing submucosal fibroid, but MRI is the most accurate in diagnosing the fibroid and locating it, and it's also help in surgical planning for the fibroid and from differentiating it from adenomasses. These are the medical therapies, which include gonadotropin releasing hormone agonist, levonorgestrel intrauterine system, norethistron anti-inflammatory drugs, oral contraceptive, selective progesterone receptor modulator, and antifibrinolytic therapies. These are the surgical treatment: myomectomy, which can be hysteroscopic, abdominal, laparoscopic, robotic, hysterectomy, uterine artery embolization, MR, guided focus ultrasound, or myolysis. Now the details of our case. A 29-year-old unmarried female came to us with complaint of abdominal distension and heaviness for 2 years. There's also heavy bleeding during periods for last 1 year, which lasts for 6 to 7 days with increased flow and passage of clots for last 1 year. Past history: we did an open myomectomy for this patient in 2015. 48 fibroids were removed at that time, but patient did not turn up after that for follow-up. Family history. History of multiple fibroids in her sister also. She was operated at some other center in 2019, but expired due to DVT post-operatively. On examination, her vitals were stable, but mild pallor was present. On per abdominal examination, previous scar was present, and uterus was irregularly enlarged to 36-week size with the flanks full. Her blood investigation were normal, including the LDH, except for hemoglobin, which was 9.1 gram per deciliter. This is her MRI report, which suggestive of a large and lobulated uterus of 22.8 into 20.2 into 18.5 centimeter in size, with multiple fibroid, subserosal, intramural, and submucosal in location. But unfortunately, we don't have any clear picture of her MRI right now. Largest fibroid was 9.8 centimeter, and there was multiple fibroid, as you can see in this report, 4.8, 6.1, 3.4, 8.5, multiple fibroids were there. Patient and her attendants were counseled for hysterectomy, but they wanted to preserve the uterus as she was unmarried. They were explained about all the risk of myomectomy and preserving the uterus. They were also explained that pregnancy is very rare after the surgery and is not without complication even if it occurs. Risk of recurrence of fibroid and need for further surgery was also explained to them. Patient's hemoglobin was built up by injectable iron and pre-op DVT prophylaxis was given. Patient was taken up for surgery on 24th February. Abdomen was opened by midline vertical incision. There was dense bowel and omental adhesions was present, which was released. Injection vasopressin 100 ml given in the concentration of 0.1 unit per ml. After that, myomectomy was done. 106 fibroids were removed of varying size from 0.5 to 9 centimeter. Myoma bed was sutured in 2 to 3 layers with Weichel number 1 suture. Largest fibroids was 9 into 6 centimeter. Bilateral uterine artery ligation was done. After that, peritoneal washing and intraperitoneal drain was inserted, and interseed is used to cover the incision sites. Blood loss during the surgery was approximately 4 liters. Patient was kept in ICU on ventilatory support initially. 11 unit PRBC, 8 FFP, 4 cryon, 6 unit RDP transfused intra and post-operatively. Patient kept in ICU for 3 days. After that, patient was shifted to ward. Patient developed paralytic ileus, which was managed conservatively. Patient discharged after 8 days in a stable condition. Her post-op hemoglobin was 8 gram%. Patient came for follow-up on day 14. Her stitches was healthy, removed on day 14. And GnRH agonist 11.25 milligram was given at that time. This is her histopathology report, which was suggestive of leiomyomatosis. Diffuse uterine leiomyomatosis is a rare condition in which innumerable ill-defined and small smooth muscle nodules have replaced most of the uterine parenchyma, which produces symmetrical enlargement of the uterus. The myoma are generally submucosal and intramural, associated with menorrhagia and infertility in reproductive age group. 40 cases of diffuse uterine leiomyomatosis have been reported till 2019. Hysterectomy is the standard treatment, as myomectomy might be unable to achieve a complete clearance and repair of uniformly involved myometrium. Other treatment modalities are hormonal treatment, transcervical resection, uterine artery embolization, and myomectomy for women of reproductive age group who wish to preserve their fertility. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pooja. I think there will be a lot of controversy and the questions on this topic. You can unshare your screen now, and you can unshare so that I can share my screen. So I'm the next speaker, and we'll be speaking on Davidov's method of vaginoplasty. because McIndoe's method has been the gold standard for it. And let's see how much justice we can do to it. So greetings from BL Kapoor Hospital today, and it's my pleasure to have you all with me, virtually at least. So I'll be talking on Mayer-Rokitansky-Kuster-Hauser syndrome, that is MRKH syndrome, and we all know about it. There are two uterine horns on either side most of the times, hypoplastic, and normal tube and ovaries, and there's a connecting ramus in between. And we need to create a vagina in this area, which is absent. So we have three categories: typical MRKH. Our patient is typical one, which is consists of 64%. Then there's atypical, and there's Merck syndrome, which also has renal, cardiac, and skeletal anomalies. We have a small clip of the last one also. Our patient is 27-year-old, and she had a small dimple, so she could have some sort of coitus, but not satisfactory, of course, and primary amenorrhea. And ultrasound showed hypoplastic uterine horns, but normal ovaries, and of course, absent vagina, no other anomalies, urinary or otherwise. Counseling is very important in these cases. In the counseling, we have to discuss that the vagina that we are creating is only for sexual purpose. She should not expect कि उसके बाद period भी आ जाएगा and she will become pregnant also. So nothing of that sort. And psychological support is required for that. And so we discussed all the methods, and any method which is used, the patient has to dilate it, in this case for 6 weeks, because after that she can resume her intercourse. So dilatation is very important post-operatively, otherwise whatever method you choose is going to fail. So in this case, we chose laparoscopic creation of neovagina by peritoneal pull-through method, which is also called Davidov's method. So here is the patient. Here's the video. So first we make an anterior releasing incision. So this goes from one round ligament to the other, and this helps us push the bladder down, and also to make this peritoneum more flexible so that it can be pulled down to line the anterior vagina. This is the posterior dissection. We cut just above the rectal fat. So we have to be in the right plane. Though these are virgin planes, we get very good areolar tissue in between the two. And we have to go laterally along the uterosacral so that the upper part of the vagina is also sufficiently wide. And we have got nice area over here. And look at the safety we have in the laparoscopic surgery as compared to the vaginal procedure, though it's been a gold standard, no doubt about it. But here everything is under vision. The bladder has gone up and the rectum is going down gradually as we dissect. So especially I, being a laparoscopic surgeon, feel very safe with the laparoscopic technique. And if the patient has a vaginal dimple, then the total surgery becomes laparoscopic. And if the patient does not have a vaginal dimple at all, then we have to do some amount of perineal surgery also, or in the area of the vulva also, vaginally. So here you can see gradually we are getting a good plane. And now we will push a sponge-on holder from below through the dimple. This Dr. Kanika is pushing. Dr. Pooja is helping me on the other side. And it's always a teamwork, and with this wonderful teamwork we are successful. It's not me alone that who does the surgeries. So here gradually we see, whenever we are in doubt, we must go a little slow so that we do not miss out on the plane and do not damage the structure. So now the dissection is done enough, and we proceed with the transverse incision at the top of the vagina. So it goes from one uterosacral to the other uterosacral ligament, sort of in the, which was a potential pouch of Douglas. Nice bloodless dissection. As you can see, we've not used any energy source anywhere. And it's very important to cut the lateral fibers of the levator ani on both the sides, because if you do not do, what happens, the vagina has a tendency to shrink back later on, especially if the dilatation has been little less than ideal. So the lateral dissection is very helpful right from the beginning to the lower part also. Soon we will be able to see the gauze fibers also. So here we are doing complete laparoscopic dissection. Some people do complete vaginal dissection and they tent the peritoneum and make a cut. So you have both the choices, whatever you are good at. So these are the lateral tissue we are cutting. Davidoff has an advantage. It gives a longer vagina and usually a wider vagina also, aligned by a peritoneum, that is autologous tissue without any abdominal scar or scar on buttocks or thighs from where we have to take graft in McIndoes. So I think we have nice space, and now we pull the peritoneum down anteriorly and posteriorly, and we take 3-4 stitches anterior and posterior and fix it to the vulva. You can see the skin of the patient now visible here. Yeah, so that's the skin. We'll come to the lower end and our dissection is complete. Little bit oozing can be taken care of either laparoscopically or you can go at the vaginal length because this bleeding is very low down. So oozing, if it doesn't stop, you can take from there also. So the peritoneum has been drawn down, anterior as well as posterior, and now what remains to be done is closing the vaginal wall. So this is Ethibond 2-number suture, which is a non-absorbable suture. So that's the right uterosacral I have taken, and now anterior seromuscular layer of the rectum. Of course, we have to leave the mucosa. So 3-4 sutures here. We take it little higher up, so it mimics the posterior fornix of the vagina. That's the left uterosacral. And taking the sutures through uterosacral and the uterine horns helps us in avoiding any vaginal prolapse later on. Though rare, it can happen. So that's the bursting suture about to get complete. We've taken a good bite through the uterine horn. So now the suture is tied and that's the end of the story. And we put a vaginal mold that is made up of foam covered with condom so that it is a soft mold. So there is no bleeding in these cases. And about follow-up, the mold is changed on day 3 and vaginal douching with betadine is done. And what we do is we tell the patient to insert the mold herself so that she gains the confidence about the length of the vagina and also about the self-dilatation because she has to do it herself later on. So this is how we follow up after 2 days, 1 week, 1 month, 3 months. And after 6 months, when we see the patient, vagina is completely lined by epithelium. We have not seen granulation tissue in our patients and good pliability of vagina, but definitely less than a normal vagina, what we have initially. And patient satisfaction is really good. The success is anatomic, that's a long vagina and 2-finger wide vagina throughout, and functional success that the patient is satisfied with the intercourse. There are variations in the surgical technique that people do. One is dissecting the ureters away. So here we've closed the wall and we felt the stitch line was a little tight. So here this is the ureter. So we make a nick between the ureter and the right uterosacral so that ureter kinking is avoided, which usually is not there because ureter in these cases is fixed, but at least there is no tension on our suture side. So the healing of the vault would be better and there will not be any cut through. So this is how we do the lateralization of ureter on the right side and similarly on the left side. So here is the ureter and we will be going just medial to it. Or some people like to do self-injectomy. You can see on the right side, that's the uterine horn and the tube has been already cut, and self-injectomy on this side is being done to avoid any hydrosalpinx or fimbrial cyst, paraovarian cyst in future. And if done properly along with the tube, ovarian vascularity does not get hampered. So we just keep close to the tube when we do the self-injectomy. Some people like to do lateral flap method, that is take all this peritoneum from here to here and cut the ramus in between and then take it from lateral flaps from both the sides into the vagina, and what happens, they get a broader area for lining the vagina, but somehow what technique I showed, anterior and posterior flaps, they completely cover the vagina very well without any granulation tissue. But yeah, there are difference of opinions. About fertility, surrogacy is the standard treatment because ovarian function is normal, and but egg retrieval is definitely challenging. It may be done vaginally if the ovaries are mobile. If not, you can go transabdominally by ultrasound guidance or even laparoscopic. And some people like to fix the ovaries at the vault at the time of surgery. So here you can see in this case, this is a Merck's case. So that's the uterine horn, absolutely lateral above the external ilia if you saw it. And then this is the other horn, and here are the ovaries. So they are almost fixed structures, there's no mobility. So in such cases, this is the surgery completed. And you see it's very difficult to mobilize this ovary and bring to the wall. So such cases we will have to do a abdominal ovum pickup, or we'll have to do a during laparoscopy we can do it. So you can do a separate laparoscopic pickup or at the time of concomitant ovum pickup along with vaginoplasty. So they stimulate the ovaries, and during laparoscopy they pick up the ova and keep the fertilized ova, they freeze them and do vaginoplasty at the same time. And another option is uterine transplant. Our Dr. Shailesh Pantambekar is doing it. So here what is done is you freeze the embryos, do the uterine transplant. Usually mother is the donor in these cases, give immunosuppressants and monitor the patient. When you find a good blood flow to the uterus, embryo transfer is done. And when you feel, because usually it's a premature baby, so whenever you feel, do a cesarean because the patient is not going to have any contractions. And at the same time, you do hysterectomy also because patient cannot be on immunosuppressants lifelong for just to keep the uterus, as it is not life-saving. So, dear colleagues, we have two laparoscopic options, Davidoff and laparoscopic Vichy. Vichy we do not use any implant, but here we are using a peritoneum as to line the vagina. So we find Davidoff more convenient, better, because patient has less pain. In Vichy, there is lot of pull the patient feels, and you have to tighten the strings every day for at least a week. So that may be painful for many, and achieves a good long vagina and higher sexual satisfaction rate. And now future may be engineered vaginas and uterus where patient can menstruate as well as have orgasm, but that's all experimental. So thank you for that, and I would like you to invite for this event. This is annual DGES event, Delhi Gynae Endoscopy Society, our own society, and this is in association with IAG as well as AOGD. Dr. Achla has kindly consented for that, and we have 6 ICOG credit points for this, and you will see the program. Our chief guest is Dr. Miss Rita Chaudhary from our hospital. Guest of honor is ICOG President Dr. Mandakini Naik, and we have oration by myself and Dr. Kishan Kumar, and we have all the expert national speakers. We have Dr. Alka, Dr. Hafiz Rahman, Dr. Paul, Dr. Sanjay Patel, Dr. Pantambekar, Dr. Shalini, Dr. Pandit, Dr. Kurian, Amit Tandon, Dr. Sunita, Sushila, and Dr. Nutan. Everybody is there, like you mentioned, the bigwigs in endoscopy, and they are there. And I invite you all for the event. Of course, the registration is free. We will be floating the brochures by today evening. Thank you so much, Dr. Achla, for giving me this opportunity. And now I invite Dr. Lakshmi Mantri, who's a senior consultant in the hospital. Please share your screen, Dr. Lakshmi.
Yes, ma'am.
She will be doing an obstetric case, that is Harlequin syndrome, ichthyosis. It is a rare case. You all must have seen it, but because of uncommon presence and how to go about in further pregnancies, we have kept this case. Dr. Lakshmi.
Hello, so good evening, everyone. So to define Harlequin ichthyosis, it is a severe genetic disorder that mainly affects the skin. The newborn is covered with plates of thick skin that crack and split apart. The name ichthyosis is derived from Greek word ichthys, means fish, and it refers to the resemblance of the skin to the scales of fish. Ichthyosis represents a heterogeneous group of diseases with hereditary and acquired forms. This harlequin type of ichthyosis, the name harlequin, it comes from both the baby's facial expressions and diamond-shaped pattern of the scales because of hyperkeratosis. In 17th century, the entertainers known as jesters or jokers or harlequins, they wore the costumes with a diamond pattern on them, as well as a particular style of face paint. It is also known as ichthyosis congenita or keratosis diffusa fetalis. Sufferers are known as harlequin fetuses, harlequin babies, or plain harlequins. Features: it is a most severe form of congenital ichthyosis, which is characterized by thickening of keratin layer of the fetal skin. The affected child is born with the massive diamond-shaped scales. The eyes, ear, mouth, all the other appendages are abnormally contracted. The scaly armor limits the child's movement, and because it is cracked where the normal skin would fold, it is useless for the skin's primary function, which is protection. Bacteria and other contaminants easily pass into the cracks and can cause lethal infections. Eyes, we can see severe ectropion because free edges of both the upper and the lower eyelids are everted, leaving the conjunctiva at the risk of desiccation and trauma. Severe traction on the lips causes eversion of the lips, upper and lower, causing eclabion and a fixed open mouth, which results in feeding difficulties. Pinna may be small and rudimentary, or it may be absent. There can be nasal hypoplasia or eroded nasal ala. Limbs are encased in thick hyperkeratosis, resulting in the flexion contractures of the arms, legs, and digits. Difficulties with the temperature regulation also because of thickened skin, which prevents normal sweat gland function and heat loss. So babies are heat intolerant, and become hyperthermic. The restriction of the chest wall expansion can result in respiratory distress, hypoventilation, and respiratory failure. Dehydration from excess water loss because of the deep fissures can cause tachycardia and poor urine output. Coming to my case report. My patient, she was 28 years old, second gravida, with history of previous one spontaneous abortion at 6 weeks. She had consulted in our OPD twice before 24 weeks. Her NT-NB scan, dual marker, and level 2 scan were all normal. She came to the labor room exactly after it was 34 weeks when she came after 24 weeks, after 10 weeks gap. She came to labor room with history of 9 months amenorrhea, pain abdomen, and leaking for last 5-6 hours. In past history, she was a known case of epilepsy, neurocysticercosis, and she was on anti-epileptic drug Levemir 500 milligrams twice a day for last 3 years. She was 34 weeks 3 days by her LMP. She had an ultrasound also with her, which was done on 9th March. At that time, she was 34 weeks, around 34 weeks, but ultrasound was showing 31 weeks of gestation with growth restriction signs. Liquor was adequate, but it had thick floating echoes in the liquor, which is known as snowflake sign. Fetal mouth was persistently open on repeated scanning. You can see here, this mouth is open, tongue is protruding. Here also you can see in the 3D ultrasound, the ectropion, the eyes are bulging. This is also tongue is protruding. Nose was very, very hypoplastic. So there was repeated scanning, tongue was protruding, no swallowing could be seen, fetal joint movements were restricted, thickened calvarial and facial skin with bilateral periorbital edema was noted with probable diagnosis of harlequin ichthyosis. On examination, uterus was 34 weeks with good uterine contraction and positive fetal heart sound. Patient had preterm spontaneous vaginal delivery after 6 hours. She had all the features of harlequin ichthyosis as described before. Baby was shifted to NICU immediately. Here you can see the image of baby. This is the actual photograph of the baby, which was covered with thick plates of hyperkeratotic skin with the deep cracks, mouth open, eyes we can hardly see. There was diffuse edema, limbs are contracted, and hands are also in the flexion deformity with severe edema here. So the first reported case was from South Carolina, USA in 1750 by Oliver Hart. First case which was diagnosed antenatally was reported in 1983. Till date, there are about 200 to 250 cases all over the globe. India's first reported case was in 2016 from Nagpur, some private hospital in Maharashtra. Few more cases have been reported from other states in country. Incidence, it is very rare, 1 in 3 lakh births. Male and female, both sexes are affected equally. She's the oldest survivor, Nusrat Nelly. She survived for 34 years and she led a normal life. Coming to the inheritance, it has autosomal recessive inheritance. Just like thalassemia cases, both the parents are the carriers of the disease and there is 25% chance of having the affected baby with the harlequin. Parents are the carriers with mutated gene, but they do not show any sign symptoms of the condition. Regarding the pathogenesis, the mutation in the gene ABCA12, which is known as ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate binding cassette transporter subfamily A, member 12 in the chromosome number region number 2 at the locus 2q35. That is the underlying cause of this disorder. In short, we can say ABCA12 gene mutation. This gene is required to encode a transmembrane protein that is essential for the normal development of skin and also mediates lipid transport in the outermost layers of the skin, that is stratum corneum. Mutations in this gene prevent the normal development of epidermis, resulting in the hard and thick scales, which is characteristic of the disease. Here you can see this is the normal skin. Here this ABCA12 gene, which is responsible for the exocytosis of the lamellar granules, that is the fat in the layer. So the desquamation process is very, very easy in the cornified layer. But here in the abnormal cells, this gene is deficient over here and there is deficiency of the lamellar granules. There is no exocytosis, lipid is very less and there is hyperkeratosis and there is no desquamation of these layers. So for the diagnosis can be confirmed by testing for the mutations in the ABCA12 gene in the affected fetus. DNA-based analysis for the prenatal testing is reliable and conclusive. Prenatal diagnosis with CVS or amniocentesis is advised in women with previously affected baby. Antenatal ultrasound, especially 3D ultrasound, is another modality of prenatal diagnosis, but late phenotypic expression of the disease poses a challenge for timely diagnosis and further management. In our case, detailed genetic evaluation with next generation sequencing was done. Parents turned out to be the carriers, that is the heterozygous for ABCA12 mutation, and baby was homozygous. So coming to the treatment, there is no specific cure from disorder, but complications can be prevented and tackled with the advanced medical care. Treatment with isotretinoin and etretinate, local application as well as oral systemic. They help in desquamation. Intensive medical therapy in form of lubricants, retinoids, keratolytics, they help to peel off and reduce the thickness of skin. Tube feeding for the feeding purposes, physiotherapy to increase the mobility, prevention of infection by appropriate antibiotics, eye care in form of eye drops and ointments, and sometimes skin incisions also given in the joints to allow the proper circulation to avoid the contractures. And intensive monitoring of the fluid and electrolyte is very essential. To decrease the friction and mechanical trauma, paraffin bandages should be used. Babies prone to large bacterial infections and sepsis, so topical as well as systemic antibiotics to minimize the risk of infection. So to summarize, harlequin ichthyosis is very rare congenital anomaly and very severe type of a genetic disorder. Prenatal genetic testing in form of chorion villus biopsy or amniocentesis to check for mutation of ABCA12 gene is the mainstay of diagnosis. However, with intensive medical support, patients now have a better chance of living into childhood and adolescence. This picture is when the baby was around 6-7 weeks, and this is the recent photograph. She is about 9 weeks now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Lakshmi. I think Dr. Ashla, now the house is open for the questions.
Yeah. But before we open the house for questions, I would, like to acknowledge that Dr. Kamal Bakshi and Dr. V.L. Bhargav have joined us. And our judges, Dr. Kiran Agarwal, Dr. Indu Chawla, and Dr. Neena Behl are also with us. So I think we will first start with Dr. Kamal Bakshi giving her comments or any questions she has. Madam, are you there?
Good evening. It was an excellent meeting and wonderful cases. Each one was very unique. And the last case, I was interested because the fetal skin biopsy was made and we had diagnosed these cases in 1986 in utero diagnosis of ichthyosis, Sjogren syndrome, loss of pain, many others. So I will now stop here and my heartiest congratulations to the team. Wonderful.
We have Dr. Seema Thakur also, who is
Yeah,
a
we'll have
geneticist.
her
She can
comments
answer.
also.
And I was especially impressed with the vaginoplasty case because the struggle which we had when we've done vaginally, I only know what problems the patient face. And I think it is a very good job done, and I think it should be propagated. Thank you very much.
Ma'am. The world is slowly shifting from McIndoes to now laparoscopic methods.
Yes,
And this I saw in RCOG also. Thank you, ma'am, for
Dr. Kiran Agarwal.
Good evening, everyone. Very nice presentations, Dr. Kansal. And one after another, I think we had a treat of good cases. Only I think that the second case, probably if we could have had a gross picture, it would have been a treat of the whole uterus with the fibroids. Number one.
Because we did myomectomy, not the hysterectomy. So,
no, a video or something like that.
Okay.
And the second is, I just wanted, just for interest sake, what was the residual size of the uterus after 100 fibroids being removed?
Unmute yourself, Dr. Pooja.
It was approximately 20 week size after the surgery.
Okay. And
it was around 36 week size with full flanks.
Okay. And your patient is doing good in the follow-up?
Yeah, she is fine.
We have put her on Leupride-Depot. So right now she's on that. After that also we plan to put her on mifepristone or something, because this was a second surgery. First was 48 fibroids we removed, this time 106. I don't think we can do a third surgery, already so many adhesions. So she has to be on some preventive medication for sure.
Very well operated. And just a comment on the last case, that just going through the literature, that harlequin ichthyosis, like the babies don't have a very long survival, but still teenagers, it has been reported. And maybe it will be not very late that we get patients with pregnancy and all that coming to us. Just a far-fetched thought. So thanks a lot. And I think very nice presentations. That's all from me.
Thank you.
Dr. Indu Chawla, are you there? Yeah, I can.
Dr. Dinesh, excellent cases, excellent presentation as usual, very impressive. Just two questions. Third case, we have been doing McIndoe and we are used to doing dissection from below. So any advantage of doing dissection from above? I feel I would be scared, maybe the increased chance of injury to bladder and bowel if I do the complete dissection from above.
I think we have two advantages. One is the graft. We don't have to take any skin graft from either split thickness or full thickness as we require in McIndoes. That is one thing. It's just peritoneum which is lining. And as far as injury is concerned, we have seen more injuries to the bladder or rectum, also vaginally. You must be expert. You are a very senior person. And laparoscopically, because when I started doing the surgery, then also I didn't feel so unsafe, because bladder is absolutely anterior. The moment you cut the peritoneum and just small pushes, so bladder is very safe in this. And about the rectum also, once we get a good plane in the upper part, then there is no problem. So I think I feel much safer regarding the injuries in laparoscopic approach. And McIndoes fine, we make the two dilated approach, which is safer, but still there are high chances of rectal and bladder damage.
Most of the videos or presentations we have seen for Davidos, they do the flap dissection and create the space between the bladder and rectum from below. and then pull through the peritoneum. You know?
Yeah,
So
if
you
there's
did
no,
a wonderful job.
yeah, if there's no dimple, then that is the only option, because we can't push anything from below over which we can cut. But like if you have small dimple also about an inch also, then it's best to go complete laparoscopic.
But you made it sound so simple that all of us should switch to that.
Dr. Hindu, it is so. Please come to our OTA and have a watch. Dr. Pooja is there. Dr. Lakshmi is there. They all have seen me operating and they know it is that way only.
And regarding the second case, one GnRH was given. And what is the plan like in the multiple myomectomy? In the end, Dr. Pooja said one injection of GnRH was given.
11.25 was given, ma'am, at that time. And it was given in the March only. So we will repeat when she come after 3 months.
So what do you plan? You plan to give it?
Maybe one more Lupride and after that on mifepristone.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Nina, your comments?
Yeah, I was mesmerized. And to be honest, after so long, talking something else besides COVID was so refreshing. We had almost forgotten that we are doing anything other than COVID. So coming back to, I'm also a laparoscopic surgeon. So mesmerizing surgery it was, Dr. Kansal. Very nice, very nice. And also I agree, she's very true. Then when we are looking through the scope, everything is so magnified that the chances of injuries become less when we are directly looking at things. Your ureters are also so clear rather than, see, I've done both over last 25 years. We've been doing things very, very differently. We started with McIndoe's, then we also tried one with the olive thing. We had put in a bead and then we had put in this fresh thing and we kept on, yes, we kept on tightening it. That also had good results. But then after we did, it's the way you were showing, this I feel is one of the best techniques. Even I agree fully. And that all those fibroids, they were presented very beautifully like pearls. I was trying to count whether they are 100 or not, but that was beautiful. That was beautiful. Just one point, I and Dr. Angela, we are working as a team, and once we removed almost 85 fibroids, and after we removed the fibroids, we just found that what was left with the uterus was just the posterior wall with 2 tubes hanging on it. There was no anterior wall left at the end to fold upon it to stitch also. So that was...
in fact, we had few fibroids left because the anesthetist said wo bachegi nahi agar aap karte rahe to. We had to leave very few ones. And she had a lot of myohyperplasia or maybe adenomyosis element. She had about 16 weeks of size uterus still remaining over there.
Absolutely. Luckily, our patient, she already had children. She was from Afghanistan, but the way they want to retain their uterus till the end. So we were trying to retain, but then the anesthetist gave us the alarm that bas kar do, ye band nahi hone wala aapse ab. Thank you. So it was very interesting. And the last case also, just one thing, can we pick up this disease before 20 weeks, because, and is there a way we can prevent it? Or Dr. Seema?
Yes. So, the ultrasound diagnosis is usually made in the 3rd trimester only, right?
Yeah.
And that is by the eclabium, ectropium, polyhydramnios, and shining particles in the amniotic fluid. So generally not before 20 weeks. So the index is beautifully highlighted in this case. This case I happened to see during pregnancy, just before the termination, and we had advised them to go for the trio whole exome sequencing. Why do we want trio? Because these days the genetic testing is very advanced, but there is lots of noises, as for in simpler words. So whenever this is matched with the parents, then we are very sure. So in this particular case, we did the mutation analysis, of course, after birth only, and we had counseled them, and that the recurrence risk is 25%. So that's what every obstetrician should know, that whenever there is any problem in the child in the pregnancy, when they are delivering the baby, they should store the DNA of the baby, and the genetic testing should be sent as a trio, so that that helps us in interpretation, because many a times it may happen that this particular gene was only present in the child.
I listened to all the presentations. Basically, Dr. Vaginoplasty was too good. I really thought we should also. And this case also that this baby case, this skin case, the baby case, I did not listen to it completely. I did listen to the, that one, that see the photo, and it was very, very interesting, I think excellent cases, Dinesh. Well done.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much,
Over
Dr.
to Monica
Pratima,
now.
everybody.
Monica, over to you for audience questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Kansal, for wonderful presentations. We were just wondering 4 cases in short time, but you did entirely justice to that, ma'am. And thanks to the judges for taking taking away all my job there, because almost all the queries which were there in the chat box have been answered, barring probably just this one which says, was ureteric stenting done in the single ureter in case 1? That is probably for Dr. Poonam. And was ureteric stenting done in the previous case described by you in the reference material? And the question is for you. Was ureteric stenting done in your
No, I did not.
It
do.
wasn't. Okay.
No,
And,
I did not do.
and has
But
it been described in
but
the
I
previous
did
reference
cystoscopy
cases?
later on. I did, after finishing the surgery, I did cystoscopy to see ureteric orifices, and that's it. And I did surgery very carefully. I was very medial, so I did not.
And the references which you had quoted, have they described any such kind of stenting before attempting the surgery?
No, they did not. Yeah.
Okay. There's that, ma'am. And rest, there was this comment from Dr. Renu saying that surrogacy after hysterectomy would have been better in the one who got 100 fibroids removed. And
Very, very right. I was wondering why this question hasn't come up till now. She was unmarried girl. Her sister had died. She was the only child in the family, and they were hell bent on, she retaining the uterus, I think, for the sole purpose of marriage. And we explained to her all the pros and cons, and she went from one hospital to another. I think she came to Mamsi also. She went to Sunrise Hospital where her previous sister had an issue.
Okay.
So she went to 3-4 places because she wanted to retain the uterus. And I did a first surgery for 48 fibroids, so she knew that I will do it. Okay, Madam, and we also, frankly, we didn't know it's going to be 100, more than 100 fibroids. We thought it would be around, say, 40, 45, because MRI fails to count the number when the number is high. And we kept on removing one after the other. So we were also, it was like a nightmare to us.
Okay. So I guess that's all about it, ma'am, barring a few comments saying that probably Parop pictures or video would have been great in the ones where you removed the fibroids. And rest, I think that's all, ma'am. So I guess that was a beautiful culmination of these 4 presentations. And probably with permission of all, I would now like to request Dr. Rekha Bharti to please come on board, and let's have this interesting aspect of quiz, which we decided to start from today for the further meetings. Dr. Rekha, please.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Monica. And I would also like to thank all the AOGD members on the behalf of AOGD for such overwhelming response for the first issue of our AOGD bulletin, which was themed on labor, the evidence-based management. And today's quiz, it is very interesting quiz and very informative also. So this is also based on the articles which were published in our AOGD bulletin of May issue. So I'll just tell you, because we are playing it for the first time, some rules, and it is very simple. You all have been given a link in your chat box. So when we start the quiz, we'll give you a pin. So pin will be given in the chat box. It will be displayed on the screen also. But then the moment you click on the link, you'll not be able to see the screen. So I'll be reading out the pin for you. So you can enter the pin from my saying it also, or you can keep it copied with you before clicking on the link. And second thing is, the first thing which you have to do is enter your nickname, and we request all of you to please enter your mobile numbers, because as soon as we get the results, we are going to call the winners on their mobile phone, and then we'll be sending them link to join this panel, and we'll be felicitating them here. And it is just 5 questions this time we have kept, and the time also is enough to answer the questions, and maybe in future we'll be keeping more questions, and we'll reduce the time. Because this time we just wanted all of you to become familiarized with this platform. This is on Kahoot.it. And now I think you all can open your chat box. So you can see in the chat box, there is a link.
So the pin is 552.
So please click on the link. The pin, I'll read out the pin for you. The pin is 5523340. Those who have written their names, please change it to your phone number. So as we have already displayed in the chat box, the one who will be answering the quickest one, the fastest finger first, will be the winner. The total time for the question is decided. It will be around 40 seconds. And the question will change after 40 seconds, but after reading the question, whosoever answers first, that will be recorded. So you can see the first question on your screen, which will come, and then it will disappear, but it will be still be there on the top of your screen. So don't be, if you cannot see it again, don't just get confused. So it is second stage arrest. On the top of the screen, you can still see the question. Second stage arrest is diagnosed after at least 2 hours of pushing in nulliparous women. This question is based on the first chapter in our bulletin, which was on labor care guide. So the first answer is true, second is false. So whatever you want to answer, just click on that.
Too late to give the hints,
39 answers. We still have 25 seconds left. No, I just told them it is from labor care guide. They should know it.
I could say that.
Yeah.
So 42 people have already answered.
Yeah. Then I think all of them, or time, maybe when the time is out, I'll read out the correct answer. 3 seconds left.
Gone.
1, 0.
Okay.
So, so the correct answer was false. This was according to the old definition of arrest of labor. And on the page number 12 of our bulletin, right column, second para says, before diagnosing second stage arrest, if maternal and fetal condition permit, allow at least 2 hours of pushing in multiparous women and at least 3 hours of pushing in nulliparous women. So these are the new labor care guidelines. So I think we can go on to the second question. So this was the score which was there. So this is suspicious and pathological tracing have a limited capacity to predict low Apgar score. You have to answer true or false in this. Suspicious and pathological tracings have a limited capacity to predict low Apgar score. The answer is, it is true. And this was on page number 18, the last para of the article, where we have written the limitations of cardiotopography. It says suspicious and pathological tracing have a limited capacity to predict metabolic acidosis and low Apgar score, which means that a large percentage of cases with suspicious and pathological tracing do not have these unfavorable outcomes. So I think now we can go on to the next question, Amit. The next question is on labor analgesia, especially where epidural is not feasible. So patient-controlled intravenous analgesia is programmed dose of IV medication, which is self-administered with lockout interval between doses, self-administered without lockout interval between doses, administered by nurse with lockout intervals between doses, administered by nurse without lockout intervals between doses? So please answer. Correct answer is 1. First answer was the correct. So this was on page number 20, right column, para 3. Patient-controlled intravenous analgesia is self-administration of programmed dose of IV medication with lockout interval between the doses. And commonly used drugs here are remifentanil and fentanyl. And remifentanil is a preferred drug over the opioids.
We can see some changes
so this
happening
is from
in the
induction of
numbers.
labor. Yes. So question is, when oxytocin is used for induction of labor, our target is to achieve, first choice is strong uterine contractions every 2 to 3 minutes. Second is uterine activity of 200 to 250 Montevideo units. Third, both 1 and 2 are correct. And fourth choice is none of the above. I think this question is like, yes, 1 and 2 both were correct, but I apologize. This 10-minute was not coming on the screen. Yes, if you are monitoring manually, it is strong uterine contractions every 2 to 3 minutes in 10 minutes. Okay, it is 2 to 3 minutes. Fine. So I changed actually the response there. Okay, the question answer is right. So, and if you are doing electronic monitoring, then you can see 200 to 250 Montevideo units is the aim, which target which you achieve. Okay. So this was the fourth question. We go on to the fifth question. Yes, very important. Shock index. Nowadays, we are giving too much importance to this to diagnose shock early. Shock index is calculated by dividing heart rate by diastolic blood pressure. Second choice is diastolic blood pressure by heart rate. Third choice is heart rate by systolic blood pressure. And fourth is systolic blood pressure by heart rate. Yes, time out. The correct answer you can see is heart rate divided by systolic blood pressure. So I think we can have the result on the screen now. So at third position, this telephone number is displaying. Wow, 2 people had 5 out of 5. So now I hand over this platform to Dr. Jyotsna Suri to felicitate the winners of this quiz.
Rekha, thank you. It was such an exciting quiz. I was taken back to, the wishing that I could also be part of it and playing. So, and I see that so many participants are there right till the end, to take part in the quiz. So congratulations to the winners. So have we given a call to them? To the first 708-9934-772. In the chat box, could you write your name, please? Who is this?
Amit must be calling.
They can raise their hands when we will promote them to panelist.
Yeah, please, Amit.
They can raise their hands. Yeah.
They can raise their hand. Also.
And then we will promote them to the panelist.
Yes.
To see there's Dr. Malti Gupta who says, I'm a plastic surgeon and joined only for academic fun. And 3 out of 5 questions for her were correct. So she's congratulating herself and thank you to Team BLK for this program.
Okay, so Dr. Neha Katare.
Neha Katare.
This is the first rank, 70.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Priyanka. Congratulations, Shakti.
Thank you, ma'am. Shakti, who is Shakti?
Shakti to hamari thi.
Ma'am, sab hamare hain.
Shakti, unmute yourself. Shakti, unmute
All right.
yourself.
Can you hear me now, ma'am?
Yeah. Shakti to hamari hai.
Yes, ma'am. Very much.
Yeah. So you, Dr. Priyanka, Dr. Neha, and you are Dr. Shakti.
Yes, ma'am. I am Dr. Shakti.
So you got the 3rd rank?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So can you just tell a few things about you? Where are you working? And just for all the audience, just say, give your introduction briefly.
Yes, ma'am. I'm presently working in Germany. My husband had to join here for a fellowship, so I decided to come along. That's the only reason I'm in Germany. Otherwise, I did my post-graduation from RML Hospital and my undergraduation from Safdarjung Hospital.
Okay.
I did my senior residency then later in Hindu Rao, and I worked for a while in Sitaram Bhartiya Hospital.
Okay, so that's
It's heartening to see, Shakti, that you joined from
Thank you.
Germany as well.
I had time, sir, fortunately today, so I didn't want to miss the opportunity to join
Great.
AOGD meeting.
No.
Great.
It's really great.
And it was really wonderful listening to all the presentations.
Yeah, so
Wonderful.
congratulations again.
Thank you, ma'am.
Your certificate is due and you will be getting it soon. And of course, you will
That's
get a prize also. So you please collect it from Safdarjung Hospital and do come over before you leave. So
Ma'am, I am in Germany. I'll maybe
in
I'll come
Germany
over
right
to
now.
collect it
Okay.
sometime.
Okay.
We'll send you the certificate
Certificate
e-way.
we'll send you. Please send your
Thank
email.
you so
to us.
much, ma'am.
Yeah, please send your email.
Yeah, or somebody from my home can come and collect it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
also not a problem.
Sure,
You can
that would be
communicate to me as is
Yeah,
convenient.
yeah,
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
So,
ma'am.
Dr. Priyanka, can you come? Can you unmute and we want to see you? Priyanka, congratulations from AOGD team. So can you just briefly introduce yourself?
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, I am Dr. Priyanka Chauhan. I am doing my JR-ship junior residency, ma'am, year 3rd, JR3 from Bareilly, Sri Ram Murthy Smarak Medical College. And ma'am, I'm just waiting for my exam to.
Okay, so very, very good. You are a brilliant girl. You will do very well in your exams, I'm sure. So did you read our AOGD bulletin also?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that's good, Rekha. That's good. Our bulletin is going all over India and probably in the world also. So that is something really good. I think editorial team has to be
Very heartening.
lot of credit for this. Yeah. So okay. So Priyanka, you please send your email. We would be sending your certificate to you, and of course we would like to give you a prize. It's due with us. You can send someone to collect it from our AOGD office.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for taking part and congratulations once again. So where is our
Neha ma'am has requested that she cannot probably join right now.
Okay.
So
Neha. Yeah, Neha.
Hi, Neha.
Yes, Neha. So congratulations, Neha.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can you just give a brief introduction about?
Ma'am, I'm working as senior resident in GRMC in Kamla Raja Hospital in Gwalior in Madhya Pradesh.
Wow. Okay. Wow, good.
Nobody from Delhi.
I think
so. Our AOGD has become more national.
Are reading our bulletin.
Yes, Neha. Did you read our bulletin? Did you get it?
Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I didn't read bulletin.
Okay.
But
yeah.
Anyhow,
so,
I was able to manage to answer all these questions.
Yes.
Because I think these all were in published articles and in our books.
Yes. No, definitely they were all for anyone who is practicing obstetrics and working actively. They were obviously good enough to answer. So congratulations, you are a brilliant girl. We all wish you a great future. So please send your email. We will send your certificate to you and also send someone to collect your prize. It's due with us in the AOGD office.
I think the quiz was the best thing.
Thank you, ma'am.
We can appreciate ourselves.
कोई बात नहीं, अपने आप ही करना चाहिए ना, अपने आप को तो खुश करना चाहिए.
Yes.
Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you Neena, Kiran, and
Thank you. And on behalf of Jackson Pal, makers of Doxypal DRL doxycycline capsules, the drug approved by government for treating the COVID-19 patients, Lycorate Prex sachet for preventing pregnancy complications, Endorec tablet, Dynogest for medical management of endometriosis. My teammates Dr. Vipin Tyavi joins me, Amit Saxena, to thank the esteemed faculty present with us today. And we hope a long way in knowledge sharing with the unending support of all the attendees. We see you our next webinar tomorrow on stress-free healer, better organized by AOGD Grace with the presence of motivational speaker Bikesh, Sister Shivani from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. onwards. Thank you so much.